Welcome, everybody. So great to see so many of you popping in here. It's fantastic. I'm so excited for our session today because we're going to be able to explore in depth, I think, something we've all been so curious to understand more about, which is, obviously most of us come from a background of learning about lucid dreaming and dream yoga and these dream practices from, let's say, a more kind of spiritual or in a sort of interior experience, something we're learning personally in the laboratories of our own minds. But we live in this unique time where, we're now seeing the intersection of these ancient practices and neuroscience. We finally have the tools, the capabilities, the curiosity to start to explore this intersection of like, what can we learn about these incredible practices that we're so familiar with from this kind of more neuroscientific perspective. But to do that, of course, we really need an expert. As much as I love this stuff and I geek out on it, I am definitely not the expert in this lane. But I'm really fortunate to be joined today by a cognitive neuroscientist who's really made this exploration, her life. Uh, before I formally introduce Dr. Gabriela Torres-Platas, who I was lucky enough to meet early this year. I'm going to bring her up and we're going to have a conversation. She's going to present to us some of her work, really the unique work that they're doing in this laboratory. But a little context for how I ended up coming across this amazing being, because you don't run across a neuroscientist who's doing this kind of work every day, right? So, just one second here. I think it was, gosh, it must have been February this year. Andrew Holacek, of course, one of our dear beloved teachers, he was participating in one of the research studies she was doing, and he said, like, listen, you should go and connect with them and see if you're a fit for the study. And I thought, okay, like these people out there in Northwestern studying dream yoga. And so I went out and I said, hook me up, do your thing, let's see what we can do. And you can see here, Gabriella is wrapping me up in the hilarious mummy costume you have to put on to do the study for a good reason, right? So they have all the electrodes stuck to my head. You'll see there's like the cannula in my nose where they're kind of measuring my breathing. They have all these different sensors that they do to check, if you are clenching your jaw or if you're the movements. She'll explain more about it. But they wrap you up like this, and I promise you, I was like, how on earth am I going to sleep in this? But check this out. I'll show you here. One of the coolest parts of this is the lab itself. So check, this is actually where you sleep. So you're going in, there's a little setup, there's the observation. And then coming in here, this is the Faraday cage they built. But look how beautiful they made it, right? They actually turned it into the sacred space. And that's where they hook you up to measure you throughout the night. In this, what I call very lovingly, the lucid dream lab. And so you can see here, when I was in, all wrapped up, all hooked up here, you couldn't really move much. You have to kind of like sleep like this. But this is the setup that we went, and I spent 4 nights in that amazing, fascinating hybrid of a scientific spiritual space where it's like literally in a university lab, but then also, walking around the lab and seeing all the touches of the contemplative sort of sleep sciences, all the books, the flags, the photographs, and realizing like, wow, what a unique moment and what a unique lab that allows us to do this. So, a little bit about the amazing woman herself. This is her here. So, Gabriela Torres-Platas, she's got a PhD, and she's a cognitive neuroscience who really is exploring this interface between ancient contemplative practices and the cutting edge brain science. She's a postdoctoral fellow in cognitive neuroscience at Northwestern University in Ken Powler's big dream lab. That's where we flew out to. She earned a PhD in neuroscience from McGill. That's where she was investigating molecular cellular pathways linked to depression and suicide. So originally really exploring around mental health. And then following that, she worked in a clinical research lab in geriatric psychiatry before moving into this work with contemplative sleep research. And it's super cool because now her research really goes into these contemplative sleep practices, but specifically working with Tibetan dream yoga. And she's investigating not just the neural correlates, but how these practices, like how do they influence mental health? How do they influence inflammation and other kinds of markers of consciousness or flexibility? And she's combining the EEG monitoring, all those kind of electrodes, with experienced practitioners, including, as you can see here, the Tibetan monks, structured dream reports, real-time lab communications, to really explore what happens in the brain when you're dreaming and when you're lucid dreaming. And she's been spotlighted by art like in the Sun, and you can really see that through her work, it's beginning to come out in the world. How can we use these practices for training the waking mind, for flexibility, for self-regulation? And just a really fun fact, which I found about her today: not only is she a rock star in this and a delightful person and so kind, but she actually used to be an aerial acrobat too, which I just find phenomenal. She's one of those alive, lucid, wonderful people. So it is my great joy to have us welcome the amazing Gabriela Torres-Platas. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mia. This is a great introduction. I feel very good about myself after you talk about it. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for inviting me to share my work, our work with all your community, which is a lot of fun. I think we had a lot of fun together and doing science
Absolutely.
fun and as rigorous as possible. Yes.
So the first question I have for you, I think, is the first question so many people ask, which is, how did you, as a kind of cognitive neuroscientist, really, working with like more like traditional, like at the kind of neurochemical level, what was it that had you become interested in doing the research into dream yoga and the contemplative sleep practices?
So to like long story short, I was neuroscience, so the cognitive part is new. I was in basic neuroscience and I wanted to know how the mind worked. But to do that, I just started my PhD in depression and suicide, looking at molecular mechanisms. We're working in the brain bank and looking at different, like microscopy, very, very molecular, very rigorous. And then when I finished, I wanted to see kind of like how can we help people outside of the like on the lab, because I was working with human brains, but it's like how can I see my work impacting people? That's when I moved to the clinical side where we were doing meditation and contemplative practices for depression and suicide. So we did clinical trials to see specifically in older people because of a lot of mindfulness, right? Like the buzzword, everyone started like, oh, mindfulness works for this and that. And there's a lot of research on mindfulness, but there was nothing done in older people. So we did the clinical trials. And yes, of course, it's not surprising. Mindfulness also was working to treat symptoms of depression, anxiety, and other psychiatric symptoms in older people. So at some point, I also got very interested in, okay, so, uh, well, because I had kind of this double life, right? Where it's like, yes, I'm doing a little bit of meditation, but I'm also very interested in the spiritual path. So how can we bring them both together? So I started getting very interested in dreams and reading a book. I remember reading like it's a Course in Miracles. I was reading that book at that point,
Yeah,
and
it's a huge book. That's a
it's
that's and that's a book that runs, it's not a standard neuroscience issue book.
not at all. So it's like I was having all these telling that these two parts, and then at some point it says something that, dear child of mine, you're dreaming right now, and I was like poof, something light up. I was like, oh, what if we are like this is true? Like this is another dream. It's a different kind of dream, but it's a dream. So how can I make a project where I can prove myself that I'm dreaming? Like, let's just do a scientific experiment. This is what I do. So let's just do it. So I started having so much fun just kind of planning a potential project or an experiment to do this. And I didn't know anything about dream yoga at the time, like nothing. And then looking online, I came upon Tenzin Wingle and his book on dream yoga. And then I got fascinated by it. So it's like, let's just do this project and let's see who's crazy enough to take me on their lab.
It's
Just
really cool because I know the lab that you're working with has done other lucid dreaming research before
yes.
as well. So there's a bit of a kind of a history there with exploring these practices. But I know that for you, maybe it would be helpful to share a little bit of a distinction for those listening around, what would be the difference between, let's say, some just research into just lucid dreaming versus research into the dream yoga or the contemplative sleep practices.
Yeah. So very, very cool example, for example, like in the lab where I joined, Ken Paller and Karen Conkley, they've been looking into dreaming, and we know that before there were studies where they use eye movements to so people can signal that they're lucid dreamers. Usually, your sleep, your body's paralyzed. Most of your muscles in REM sleep, the rapid eye movement sleep, you're paralyzed, so you don't act in your dreams, right? So then everything, all your muscles are relaxed and paralyzed except your eyes and your breathing. So they start using eye movements to signal, like, so the dreamer can signal the researchers, I am having a lucid dream. Based on that, Karen Conkley and other labs around the world with Ken, they started doing this research on let's just give math problems to people in during sleep.
Just mute yourself again. Thanks.
Yes.
Great.
And then
Give
communicate.
math problems.
Yes, oh, so sorry. Yeah, so the math problems. So they were giving math problems to people so they can have a two-way communication during a dream, during a lucid dream. So kind of like this was the first time that communication in a lucid dream was possible. So it became kind of like a boom because now dreaming was not just, like a woo-woo topic and non-scientific. It's like there's objective measures that we can actually study scientifically. So this is the work that Karen did before, and yeah, so this paper, which was a scientific paper with different labs in the world, they show that they can give math problems to people and they can answer with eye movements.
That's
Or
amazing. So, I mean, so
yeah,
thinking about this from the perspective of, we often talk about the sleeping state, the dreaming state, waking state, and this cool experiment that's been fleshed out across a few different research experiments is essentially saying that we can communicate between states, which is I know because
exactly.
when I was in the lab, that was part of what I was working to do with you all,
Yes,
which is a very trippy feeling when you're in a dream. You're in a lucid dream, and for those who've had lucid dreams, you know this feeling, right? You're in this completely immersive other reality. I remember for me, I was in this kind of like big warehouse space, and I get lucid. I know that I'm dreaming. I know that I'm in the sleeping lab, right? So I'm like, I must do the signals. This is the most important thing, is to let them know that I'm lucid. And so I'm in the dream going, and I'm going, is it working? Like, I hope it's working. I don't know if it's working. And then to come out of that dream space and you think, oh no, I must have, like, there's no way they would have picked that up. But to know that they do, and there's actually this communication from the dreaming state to the waking state is mind blowing because, like Gabriella was saying, now they can do things like, okay, what can we experiment with to have people communicate? But what I'm curious about, I mean, maybe I know this is we can kind of bridge into the work that you're currently doing. I think so much of this research now has obviously thoroughly proved that lucid dreaming is real, that we can communicate from the dream state. So, what is the question that you're really interested in and trying to answer with your research?
so the difference is come bridging it from the previous question. There was a lot of research on lucid dreaming and how people use lucid dreaming, but I'm coming more from a contemplative practice profile, right? Like I was doing the mindfulness based cognitive therapy to help people. So how can you use lucid dreaming for spiritual growth? So I think that's where my research came into place because it's like I came to a lucid dream lab, but to try to explore what is happening when people use lucid dreaming for spiritual purposes. So yeah, this is kind of what I kind of brought on the table and my background. And I came to this lab to learn more about the cognitive neuroscience, which is what we're doing now.
Can you just explain just the distinction between neuroscience and cognitive neuroscience?
Yes. So neuroscience is pretty much just looking at everything neural related. So it's like how the neuron works, how the transmission of one neuron to the next one, what's the molecular pathways, what brain areas, and it's very molecular. Let's say, well, it could not be molecular, but mostly it's very like genes and proteins and neurons and electrical activity, where cognitive is more how my brain is interpreting signals. How am I taking, like memory, for example, that's very cognitive neuroscience. It's like, okay, how am I, you're giving me memory tasks and how I'm going to remember it, like tomorrow with sounds. So it's pretty much what we're doing. Like, because this, if I can explain a little bit about how this lab came, a lucid dreaming lab, They were a memory lab where they use sounds to reactivate memories during sleep. So then it's like, what if we use sounds to react, like to trigger a lucid dream instead of triggering memories? So that's kind of like how they jump from memory, which is a cognitive neuroscience memory lab, to a lucid dream lab. And
Amazing.
that's,
So before they were using sound to stimulate sort of memories to come up in non-lucid dreams, to see if they could have
yeah,
a sound associated with a certain memory, hearing it while you're fast asleep, and by having the association, it kind of gets incorporated into the dream. Was that the original?
reactivated and incorporated.
Ah, yeah,
Then it's like
yeah.
you kind of like are selecting by the sound, selecting specific memories to be incorporated more than the others just because they're associated to a sound. So it's like if I can explain you a little bit, because it's kind of very similar to what we're doing, and I think it's important to understand the methodology because if you're learning something during the day, and let's say you're reading something and I play a cue, like sound cue. So for example, in this case, they were people were locating objects in the space. So they could have a screen and they're locating different objects. And then when the cat was coming in the screen in a specific location, there was a meow sound, like meow. So then you're associating the location of the cat in the screen with the meow sound. Then when you go to sleep in deep sleep, in slow wave sleep, you play the meow sound. So then the next morning, when you do the test again, you are going to be better at remembering the meow
Wow.
and whatever was cute with sound than the ones that were not cute. So we know that for sure that you can influence memory by that.
That's
And then
incredible.
yes, exactly. So then you use the same one with the lucid dream, but you associate like the state, right? Like what am I doing? Am I dreaming or not? Kind of like be critical of your state. So we teach people to associate because obviously we had dream yoga practitioners, which is very different to having lucid dreamers because dream yoga practitioners tend to be very good at becoming lucid and questioning this. But when lucid dreamers come, they may need a little bit of the reminder. So they're in the dream, and before going to sleep, they associate the sound with the state of mind or like what am I awake, am I asleep? So they before going to sleep they hear that sound usually which
So
is
they
the
so they'll yeah, so they'll hear a sound and they'll associate it with what we would call like a state check or a reality check. Or like, hang on, beep beep beep. Am I dreaming right now? Wait, am I dreaming?
exactly
Right. So they're associating the sound with trying to remember and activate that sense of lucidity. Okay, cool. So they train with that
exactly
during the day.
exactly. We train them usually before going to sleep. And then as they fall asleep thinking about this sound and this and the state check pretty much. And then when we detect REM sleep, so what like you were talking about the electrodes, we have electrodes in different parts of the head, but we also have electrodes in the around the eyes. We measure the breathing and the muscle activity. So we know when we're in REM sleep, we're paralyzed. So there's no activity. So we're sure that person is in REM sleep.
So
But when
there's
we
no
did,
movement of the jaw, like none of it. So it's just
there's all
gotcha.
the muscles are paralyzed except your eyes, and you're still breathing. But the rest, you'd see like no activity of the muscles. So then that's like we identify, okay, that's REM sleep, and that's when we play the sounds very faintly and without waking people up. So then they're in their dreams and they can hear the sound and be like, oh, what state, like the state check, where am I? And then helping them to become lucid. So that's
It's
kind
in,
of,
it's interesting because this model is what there's a kind of a technology race going on right now for a two home version of this. You know, I know
yeah,
many of this community have bought and tried what's out there right now, but nothing has quite nailed this because most of the versions out there right now don't have electrodes. So they're kind of a little more hit and miss because they're trying to go off certain things that are not always accurate, so it wakes them up in the wrong period of time or they haven't fallen asleep yet. But what you're saying, which I think is interesting, is that if you can have let's say we have a device that could accurately 100% know this is REM,
yeah,
then this is the model of how we could have these kind of technological inductions, right? Because they do seem to have good
yeah.
effect.
And we're working on that. So people can have it at home. So we're doing it in the lab. So we have to bring people in and monitor the sleep and manually play the sounds when we see REM. But now there's these EEG bands that you can sleep with. And then if we can just play a sound through your phone when the algorithm detects REM sleep, then you can hear the same cue while you're sleeping at home without us being like there every time at the sleep stages, and then
Amazing.
have that being cued.
And that's
Yeah.
in process, right? That's a to be confirmed process of like what can come to market. Because I know so many people are interested in having some kind of device like that. And you're doing it with the Muse headband, right? Is the
Yes,
idea?
yes, yes.
Cool.
Yes. We're doing it for research purposes, but the idea is that we're going to be doing research, citizen science research with that. So eventually, hopefully, will come out and everyone can use it. But we're still testing it. It's working really well, but still there's some tweaks that needs to be
Cool.
done.
All right,
Yeah.
that's a part two to come back
Yes,
to.
yes, yes.
But then I guess we'd love to hear a little bit about your work. Like what is, if you're open to sharing.
Yes. Yeah, so it's very interesting because the idea of the first project I started in this lab was to see, okay, what happens? We don't know anything about dream yoga, so let's just try to characterize it. What is dream yoga? What do people do when they practice this? Like, where are these practices coming from? Are they coming from lineage? What are people doing? So that's one part. Then the other part is, well, let's bring them to the lab and try to see, is this really happening in REM sleep, right? Because we don't know anything. Like, are people really asleep when they're doing these practices? Are people in an intermediate state? We don't know. So it's like, let's just bring people, experts in dream yoga, hook them up in with the EEG, and then let's just see what happens. And because they technically they are very good to, like signal, because they're very good with the control, dream control. That was our hypothesis, right? We think dream yoga practitioners are very good at controlling different aspects of the dream. It's kind of the practice. And then let's just have them sleep in the lab and have a communication with them when they're going to start the practice, whatever dream yoga practice they do, and then they signal, I'm starting kind of on a Morse code, like between eye signals and sniffs, saying, okay, I'm going to start to do this. You tell me I'm lucid with eye movements, and then you let me know when you're going to start your dream yoga practice, and then when you finish it. And like that, we can isolate with the EEG, like the electroencephalogram, and like to measure the brain activity, and we can kind of understand the correlates, the
So it's
neural
like
correlates.
timestamps. So essentially
Exactly.
you're being able to say, okay, we know that we can check when they're lucid because we can see their brain state, that their muscles aren't moving. We know that they're in REM. So they're definitely in a dream. If they send us eye signals while they're in that state, we know that they're lucid. And I
Yeah.
remember having to practice the sniffs. Oh boy. And the idea
Yes.
was to use the sniffs like to
Yes.
signal that you're about to begin a practice and then and sniff at the end. At the first like four times when I was practicing at home, they did the sniffs. I just kept waking myself up. I was like,
I know
ah.
some people different, but if you want, I can show you a slide of just how this looks
Yeah,
like,
please, please, please show
um,
us.
because I think it's easier to understand. And let me just find it.
Yeah.
This is
And
what
yeah,
we,
the lab is the Ken Pala lab in Northwestern University,
yes.
Chicago. Yes, thanks. Thanks, Patrick.
Um, so just give me a second. Let me share my screen. Okay. So just a little bit of people go through different sleep stages. And when we play the sound, moving left, right, as I explained, I'm lucid two sniffs to start the practice and four sniffs to finish the practice. And that's kind of like how we set up the experiment. Once we detect REM sleep, which I mean, maybe complicated this little hypnogram, but we detect REM sleep. And then we can see here, for example, this is the chin. Like, can you see my mouse?
Yes, yes, yes.
This is the EMG, so that's the muscle. It's very, very, very thin, means that there's no activity. Here in red, you have the two the electrooculagram, so we can detect the eye movements. So when the participants do left, right, left, right, left, right, we can see it very, 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 very nicely. And in the other channels, we see the brain activity. So we know that at this period of time, the participant got lucid. And then we have here the airflow. The participant is breathing a lot, like you can see here,
Normal. Mm.
up and down, and then all of a sudden it's very clear. There's two sniffs saying I am starting my dream yoga practice. And then, for example, here, this is when an example of wakefulness. And the participant, if you see the difference of the EMG, that is the electromyogram, the muscle activity is very thin, and this is very thick. And you see here the brain is awake, and the participant did the four sniffs. He was waking up while doing the four sniffs after he finished his dream yoga practice.
Amazing. Wow, it's
Yes.
so amazing. And so then you essentially have the timestamps to say, well, they were doing their dream yoga practice between the two sniffs and the four sniffs. So then we can be
Yeah,
curious, like, is there anything we can notice that we can detect during that time?
exactly.
That's
On the
super cool. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we also have the microphenomenology part, which
Mhm.
you were part of, where we have someone that does only microphenomenology. So microphenomenology is kind of like for 5 minutes of your dream, let's just zoom in to try to understand exactly what was happening. It's very different to have the dream report where it's like, tell me everything you can remember, and the participant just kind of selects different things. So Emma, which we're working with, she's a microphenomenologist, and she is trained to ask questions, kind of like a police
Oh my
interview,
gosh, is she I
right? Like,
mean, she did it. She did an exit. One of the conversations with me was like 2.5 hours. And she asks me, I mean, it was amazing because she asked me questions around because when I did the study with you, I did a wild in, so I saw the dream form. And so she asked me questions about the formation of the dream. I just never even thought,
yeah,
about sense of perspective or sense of color or light or things that you're like, wow, like beginning like this curiosity of like, well, how does phenomena express in this like micro moment to moment to moment way. It
yeah,
was like what a cool parallel to have both like the hard readings and then
yes.
this really in-depth kind of subjective analysis.
Yeah. So that then we have both of them, so we can really have the characterization of what's happening in the brain, what is she doing. But also, if you remember, we asked them to fill a bunch of questionnaires and do some tasks. With they seem very boring tasks, but they're like sit down in the computer, so they start doing some tasks, so we can measure cognitively what's happening. So it's like attention and different facets of cognition that we think might be changed or by dream yoga. So at this point, we don't know because we're just measuring one point in time. Experts have this profile. We don't know if it's because of the dream yoga or, like some other.
Right. So you're trying to see different correlations of people who are experienced and practiced with dream yoga and then doing a whole lot of kind of baseline tests of their capacities, like their cognitive, where they're
Yes,
ranking.
exactly.
But you're right, because you only have one moment, you're not sure if it's and I know we've had this discussion of like, is it dream yoga that causes this, or does this cause dream yoga, or is it like a really cool loop
Yes,
where the more you work on your kind of it's like what you're saying, cognitive flexibility, you become better at dream yoga, or does dream yoga make you better at this? These are the
exactly.
questions that you're going to answer for us the next 15 years.
Yeah, well, some of them I already have some preliminary data that I can also share with you.
Yeah, please. I mean, go ahead if you want to jump up and bring your slides up and just walk us
Yeah,
through
I mean, it's just
anything
again,
that's
very preliminary data, but this is, well, let me just find it because I have um
you heard it here first, everybody.
what? Yes, it's not published yet, so we are working on it. But I can share with you a little bit of the questionnaires we gave the dream yoga experts.
Yeah. I'm just going to answer a couple of quick questions while you bring that up. So, Ashby, yes. So, in general, for everybody, the muscles, like the respiratory muscles, are not paralyzed, right? So, even
Yeah,
if you're just a normal dreamer and if you're getting lucid for the first time, you have the ability to influence the way you dream, which is why when you get lucid, if you want to stabilize the dream, you can take a nice, deep, relaxing breath, right? I would say that there is definitely an automaticity of breathing that kicks in. So if you're trying to hold your breath in a lucid dream, you'll either wake up or the breathing will just kick in again. So there is a point where, like, because your body's not going to let itself not breathe, but you have this ability to sniff, to lengthen, to shorten. That's not just for advanced practitioners. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so we have these like non-surprising. How well, like, are they good lucid dreamers or not, right? Like just, and I mean, there's a lot of text here. So just it was a questionnaire asking different facets of lucid dreaming. Is it a prolonged lucid dream? How many attempts? How many times you succeed? How confident are you? The activity, the control, how long are the lucid dreams? So, well, we have that the dream yoga practitioners, are way better than majority of the population, which is not surprising. It's just like, well, clearly they're training to do this, right? Then we had a questionnaire for mindfulness. So it's like, well, this is a contemplative practice. Is this really working on some facets of mindfulness, right? That is being researched for a long. So we gave them this questionnaire, looking at how mindful dream yoga practitioners are, and we found that they are more mindful than normative data. So yeah, just I'm showing just a little bit like the different questions, but in general, what matters is really the score. And I think the one that I'm very excited about, well, this very quickly, sleep. Another question. How, if you are practicing all night, right? This everyone asks me this, like, what if you are disrupting your sleep every night? Like, how well is your sleep? Like, are you really like from like having everything, all the benefits of sleep, or you're just cutting on your sleep? So one of the questioners were the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, to just to know like, okay, let's see how good or bad is their reported sleep. And it turns out that the sleep is pretty normal, like compared to the general population. And what drives it is the disturbances. So, of course, they are disturbed because they wake up at night to do their practices. But despite that, the sleep scores seem similar to the rest
Oh,
of the
that's
people.
so interesting, right? Because the quality and the efficiency and that's all like great, but latency makes sense too because most lucid dreamers and dream yoga practitioners we hang out in the hypnagogic.
Yeah,
we, we tend to
yeah,
like spend half an hour, 45 minutes like entering into sleep, right? So and then disturbance because of the practices, but of course disturbance being a voluntary
wake
activity.
ups, wake
Yeah,
ups at
right.
night, and
Interesting.
which
Wow. But
makes sense.
it all kind of evens out.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
this is great. It's like I mean, the disturbance is higher, but overall the scores are similar.
Interesting.
And then this is my favorite part because this was one of our hypotheses when I started thinking, okay, what's different in dream yoga practitioners? So it's like, well, I would say it's cognitive flexibility. And what is cognitive Well, the closest one that I came across was cognitive flexibility, which is something that people measure scientifically. I was thinking, well, what does like dream yoga practitioners tend to switch environments and adapt to the dream and work with the dream. So that gives you a lot of like the switching coming back and how do you adapt to a place, and if not, then just switch to a different thing and just work with a different scenario with a different response from the dream. So the closest part I thought is like, well, let's measure cognitive flexibility. So there are different facets of cognitive flexibility. There's not one way to measure it. So I gave them a few different tasks. So one is the Wisconsin card sorting task, and the other ones that there I have not analyzed. But what I can show you is that they seem to have more cognitive flexibility, and then they did better in the Wisconsin card sorting task, which the bird part is the computerized version. And well, the Iowa gambling task did not show any difference. They are similar. So here is like, well, there is a like we think that the dream yoga might be influencing the cognitive flexibility.
That's so interesting. And especially, I know, like, Gabby, you and I have talked about how, we're sort of looking at a lot of the dream yoga practitioners who came into your lab. And one of the correlations is like, oh, most of these dream yoga practitioners have had really interesting lives with many different identities, different
Yeah,
professions over time. Like there actually we were like, huh, most yoga, these kind of yoga experience yoga practitioners have been this and then became that and then became this. And like they've had this very
yeah,
adaptive, and we were thinking, wow, I wonder if there's something to that flexibility of identity that is married with dream yoga or vice versa. Maybe it's the dream yoga
exactly.
practices that have made us feel more able and capable to not be so attached to one particular
Yeah.
self, right? which is what this, because all this comes back down to, the ability to be a happy, healthy, functioning, present human being, right?
Yeah, yeah. And we don't know, like at this point is like, is it because you are like that, like people that have like that are dream yoga experts, they're flexible to start with,
Hmm.
and then that's why dream yoga is easier, or dream yoga is helping for the flexibility that we don't know. And also this needs to be backed up with more participants and kind of like more rigorously. But preliminary data shows that. So it's very exciting to see like, well, it is doing something.
It's a good clue to follow, right? You're in the kind of
Okay,
the
now we
rabbit
have
hole.
something. Yeah, exactly. Now we
Yeah.
follow.
It's interesting because I think, well, actually, let me just answer a couple of the questions here that have popped up. There is, Paulo was asking, Mia, could you share the dream yoga practice you did in the lab and what specific findings they had? So we don't have the specific findings. This is actually the first time I'm hearing the preliminary stuff. But and I'll also say, wow, like being in the dream yoga lab was so intensely humbling for me because obviously, when I'm at home, I have my practice, I was super confident, I'd been prepping, and I got to the lab and I had to face down all of my A student people pleasing, the pressure, because I got into the lab and there's someone like sitting there staying up all night, and the pressure of like, I don't want to let them down, I don't want to waste their time. And so I tell you what, only on one of the nights, not only on one of the nights did I only get lucid once, I didn't even dream on the other nights. That's how stressed out I got myself. Just I want to really put my hand up and say like it was amazing because I learned so much about how I was lying in that lab. I was trying to sleep all night. I was trying to dream all night, and every time I would begin to go into a dream, I would contract because of I was so attached and grasping because I wanted to please. So I also want to say like that was an amazing learning experience for me. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, I got lucid all the time like I thought I would. Little funny little arrogant ego. Thank goodness I was able to contribute a piece of data. And I'd say in that one I worked with moving through walls, so doing the impossible things and working with the enlargement of objects. So just working with the the basic stage 2, stage 3 practices. So just yeah, what it was an amazing experience to face my own mind. I'll tell you that. Another question here. Oh, has anyone been able to capture a lucid dreamer who let the dream and the self dissolve and rest in empty awareness? I don't know if
Ooh.
you can, I don't know if you're allowed to divulge information like that.
I mean, we did have a like someone told us that happened. But the
Mm.
problem is I mean, there were a few instances where participants reported dissolution or emptiness, right? Like nothingness. Um, the only problem that we have is that when people are in those stages, or at least in my hands, where people were there, and me and Daniel, we were the researchers there, there's no way they could tell us that they were in that state. So they were not able to move their eyes, they were not able to sniff. So they were kind of in a different sleep stage where
Oh,
none of
because
that.
they've dropped out of the phenomenological dream state.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know. And so we have the whole night recording. I don't know exactly when that happened. So it is somewhere in the 8, 9 hours of sleep that we have. And we have a dream report the next day,
Yeah.
or they woke up saying, yes, this happened. There was a dissolution. There was kind of like a clear light. If we don't have the specific timestamps, which is this is the part that is super important, that we have when this happened, to be able to isolate that part and see what happens in the brain. Otherwise, we just have noise and we're lost in the noise of the electrical activity of the brain.
Hmm.
So yes, we
So,
have a
so
report.
they would need to get lucid, send the signals, move into the emptiness, and then ideally either like wake up from it or be able to signal. Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm
So it's very
curious,
yeah.
obviously working with EEGs is in some ways quite a blunt instrument, right? Because I'm thinking really futuristically here.
Yes,
But
yes.
one of the things I've noticed is like, I know with the subtlety of practice, for instance, when I'm doing different dream yoga practices in the dream, it's so subtle. Like what's happening is so, so subtle. And that I can imagine, hey guys, just everyone please make sure you're muted. Thank you. That it can be really, I can imagine that it might not be picked up or registered as change at that kind of base electrical level. And so I'm curious, I wonder if there's going to be development in technology, like a capacity to pick up more sensitive changes or signals. I don't know. Is there anything out there like that yet? No, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. That's what
Ah,
we need a lot of people. So that's what we need a lot of people, a lot of like a big sample size to be able
yeah.
to pick up very subtle. And it's really hard. I mean, people don't just, I'm gonna have a clear like experience right now and let you know. That's really hard. So we're working on it, but yeah,
But
we will have.
that's why your system that you're developing with the headbands
Yes.
is so great. So for context, uh, they're thinking of being able to send these headbands out to lucid dreamers, dream yoga practitioners, and then we can do this in home. Of course, we're doing it at home is so much easier than being in a lab and being hooked up. But they'll be able to take way bigger sample sets of data then because we can just it sends everything back, right? That would be the idea of this kind of what did you call it, like citizen data? What did you call
Science.
it?
It is in science. Yeah.
Citizen science. Cool. So bigger sample sizes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
So
Huh.
one day, working on it.
And so I'm curious for you though as well, have you in the lab worked with any of the kind of traditional dream yoga monks? Like have you worked with anyone from the traditional, like really immersed in those traditions?
Yes. So we are collaborating. So there's this program called the Emory Tibet Science Initiative that we're part of, where um, we train a cohort of monks every year that come to train in neuroscience methods to be able to bring back to the monastery, and then they learn to do science, and then they have science projects. So as part of this program, we train the first cohort of people that are very interested in lucid dreaming. So we are working with them. So we help them just set up a sleep lab in India, in one of the monasteries in Drepung Loseling. And we also have a portable EEG. We brought them one. So we have been working to go to locations, to monasteries, to like dream yoga monasteries, people that practice, and we're going to be able to measure the same experimental approach but in the monasteries. And we have had with them, we had one practitioner in the north of India that slept 3 nights with the EEG, with the portable EEG. And yeah, he explored many different spaces, and obviously everything is in Tibetan, so we are observers there. And then there's the monks, the monastics, but there's nuns too. They translate later, and then we're working with them to do that. And we're having other projects and in the pipeline that we are hoping to go to Bhutan even
I
to
love I
kind
love that synthesis. I think one of the things I just have so much respect for with the lab is that there is this real sense of collaboration where teaching like actually teaching the skill sets of science, neuroscience, so that those explorations can be done within those communities, just in the
yes,
way that we have been so blessed to receive, their incredible
yeah,
spiritual technology, and really seeing this as this, I really feel the kind of mutual and co-elevative way that you work together with the different monasteries, not just to go in there and like extract data, but to actually teach them and to empower them to be the researchers they've always been. The truth about
exactly,
Tibetan Buddhists
exactly.
is like it's been the greatest research development
Yes.
place in the world has been the Himalayas for thousands of years, right? And now they just got fancy gadgets to do a little bit more. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's so fun to work with them. And yeah, and then to see them like they're so good already, like they're trained to be like super inquisitive and to question things, and they already have kind of like the scientific training in a way. Then you just give them the technology pretty much, and then yeah, we
Amazing.
working with them. So hopefully there's also, I can talk to you about this more in the future. So
And
far
that
we're
means you can also reach some of the practitioners who are obviously so practiced, but they live in places they're never going to come out to a sleep lab. That's really
exactly. And the worst part is like that because I mean the very traditional dream yoga practice, you're not supposed to say anything about it, right? Like you don't share this with anyone. This is very personal, maybe with your teacher. but you don't talk about this. So then finding practitioners that say like, oh, it's kind of going against it. Or like, I'm a great dream yoga practitioner. You don't find that. No one is gonna come up saying, I am very really good. So then it's been really challenging to find someone, but we did receive a letter from His Holiness uh, saying I endorse this research. So that has helped a lot. People be like, okay, this is for science and this is for the better good. So
Beautiful.
let's just
Yeah.
come out and let's do it. Yeah. So
So I'm
that's it.
curious, with the work you've been doing, what would you say, what is one of the biggest surprising insights or experiences you've had during your time doing this work?
Meeting the practitioners has been the best thing has ever happened to me, honestly. Like just being, this is like every time we have a practitioner, like you coming to the lab, it's because I work with Daniel. So Daniel is a PhD student working in the same project with me. And every time is like a practitioner goes away after 3 days of being in the lab, we said like, that's it, like this, everything was paid off already. Like it doesn't matter the result, it's just so fun to meet these amazing people, and the way they see the world is so different, and for us it's so refreshing, and it's always so nice to hang out with the practitioners. And
We're a certain flavor of crazy, aren't we? We're really
yes, yes, and the
It's what
monastics.
happens when you start to relate to everything like the dreamlike phenomena,
Yes,
It
yes,
becomes a little more fun, it becomes a little more.
yeah, it's so refreshing. And also with the monastics, I mean, just working with the monastics have been also amazing. So
I mean, I
this
think
is
that's the thing that blew my mind. I remember when I went out to Nepal, there's a Tibetan Bon project out there that I volunteer with, and the Geshe Sonam, who runs that project, is just I call him like just the most amazing bodhisattva in action because he's probably one of the most busy, productive, effective beings. Like you think of monks, you think, oh, it must be nice for them. They're up in their
oh
monastery.
no.
Like, oh no, no. Like this, he takes care of 70 children that he built a school and a home for to bring that in. He's been responsible for building this extraordinary monastery that we've been built. Like he is a busy dude. And he is full of delight and joy and presence and kindness and like all of the things that we all work and practice to learn to more effortlessly connect with in a body is like wow. So I think I've also had that experience of just going, I think the fruits of these teachings are often shown through those individuals who have just allowed them to embody through them. It's super, super inspiring.
Yeah, I agree totally.
I'm going to pull out some questions here from the chat. I don't think we have a chance to answer everyone's questions, so forgive me. I'm gonna try pull out questions that I think will be most supportive for us all. So give me a second here. So we'll start with Francois. Dear doctor, in your research, have you noticed any changes in brain chemistry during lucid dreaming? I wonder if there are any specific chemicals needed to support the odds of having a lucid dream or sustaining it. Ah, this is good for your old
Ah,
school
yes.
neuroscience side.
So there is, we're working on a project too, where Daniel is leading it, where there is this drug. I don't know if I should be talking about drugs. It's a drug that is used for Alzheimer's disease. So what it does is help with cognition in Alzheimer's. So it helps
This
people,
galantamine. Yeah,
galantamine.
yeah.
And that is acetylcholine esterase inhibitor, which means is that it leaves the acetylcholine in in the synaptic cleft, like in the system for
Because
longer.
the acetylcholine is a fundamental part of what is creating REM, right? So like we know that
Exactly.
when it's
Exactly.
REM, you need the acetylcholine. This inhibits the thing that eats the acetylcholine. So the thing
Exactly.
that goes nom 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 and eats the dream, this lowers that. So you have like bigger, longer, more vivid dreams, right? Is that the
By stabilizing.
this is my layperson's explanation. It's like Pac-Man.
Perfect. This is perfect. Thank you. Great. So then when you have galantamine, then you're more likely to have a lucid dream. So that's kind of like well, we think that acetylcholine is very important for that because it's also driving REM sleep. So maybe stabilizing REM, But so far, I don't think any other study looking at specific neurotransmitters or chemistry of the lucid dream has been done. So I think it's part of the future research coming up of what are the neurotransmitters that are in charge of driving
Mm,
and sustaining a lucid dream, because I think you have acetylcholine is one of them, but that drives other ones. So it's like kind of like
sure.
a different.
I guess that's what's been really something I've been really curious about too, because most of the time when I'm working with clients and giving them, support for either strengthening their REM cycles or strengthening their deep sleep so they can dream better, it tends to be more about sleep and dream. There doesn't seem to be something necessarily that's like the lucidity button. Like,
Yeah.
of course, better, vivid, yummy dreams mean you're more likely to recognize you're dreaming. I
Yeah.
know there was like some exploration around kind of stimulating the brain with different brain waves, but I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how accurate that was or where that's gone.
I know there's a paper being in preparation right now. Um,
Mm.
I think it's a Dutch group that are working on the stimulation of a specific brain area. And I don't know exactly what the results are because it's in preparation. It's not published yet, but I know they're working on specific brain stimulation. So stay tuned. It's
Right.
gonna
So
come
maybe,
up.
yeah. So maybe it's like a part of the brain, or I know they're working with different, I think it was like a 40 hertz signal, like trying to figure out what the tweaks are. Okay. So that's all in process.
Yes.
Marion asks, given your background in geriatrics, any tips of those who are aging? She's 78, when it comes to dream yoga.
Ooh, that's a very good question. Um, I actually, you would be better at answering that. Me, I don't know. Like, I don't think I know. We know that with age, sleep cycles change a lot. So it's this kind of like the parts of the biology. I don't want to say this because I don't know if it's helping or not, but biology is changing when you get older. And we don't know. We're also having a study on superagers, that people that are actually kind of like the um like the opposite of Alzheimer's. It's like they have super good memory, they don't decline. And we're trying to see what's going on in their sleep, because we know that with age, sleep cycles change completely. Then, I mean, slow wave sleep is shorter. And so for sure,
Do REM cycles stay the same, or do they shorten, or do they
there's
lengthen,
also
or?
they're also shorter because the whole sleep is also shorter. So everything
Okay.
becomes like lighter, but I don't know if that would help or not. With the dream yoga practice, I would say biology is changing. So I don't know if anything there would be something to support. Uh,
Yeah, I
you
mean, maybe one of
know,
the things, I mean, I say this with any client who wants to understand their sleep a bit better, is like for a few months you could do some proper sleep tracking to learn a little bit about how long your REM cycles are, how long your deep sleep. You can
mhm,
just get a
mhm.
map of where you are. And then, for instance, if you're like, oh, I'm only really getting these short bursts of REM, which might make lucid dreaming a little more challenging, then looking into ways to naturally support the levels of like the acetylcholine or whatever it is in order to just strengthen those REM cycles. And then even
Yeah,
just saying, okay, well, how can I create a little bit more sleeping time in the mornings to
yeah,
really maximize that? It's going to be more around that from a physiological point of view. But I'd say like whether you're young or old, the the actual internal induction processes are always going to be the same. And I think
yeah,
Gabrielle is right about, in some ways, when you have kind of shorter, lighter REM, if you're prepared and you're practiced and you know your techniques, you can use that, right? So if you're kind of like shorter REM, but you're bouncing in and out, if you know how to enter back into a dream, or if you know how to enter into a dream from these micro awakenings, then it becomes a gift, right? So I think all of us have to work with the physiology and the psyche that we have. It's both sides.
exactly.
Gilda, you're asking, are they seated in meditation pose or lying down when they're practicing dream yoga? Is there a difference? Yeah, I mean, I'll speak for myself. I was lying
Please
down,
do
but
it.
but I would say, I mean, I know traditionally when you do the dream yoga trainings and retreat, you sleep in a meditation box, and part of that is to encourage the wakefulness, right? So I mean, I don't have that skill set. I can't sleep sitting up. My version, and like a lot of, I'd say, more Western practitioners' version, especially if you're doing something like a wild practice, like a wake induced lucid dream where you go right into the dream from waking, is I would be on my back, with myself a little bit propped up, right? That's usually enough for me. If I'm sitting up, I'm wide awake. I haven't built the practice of being able to drop into the layers of sleep sitting up. But I mean, I'm sure your monastics probably were doing it sitting up.
Well, we haven't found anyone that does that, but
Okay.
I think so far everyone is lying down and in like the way I understand most of the practices come in the lucid dream.
Yeah. And I think that's important to know is like I think there is, the reason why they train sitting up like this is not just for dream yoga. It's because they're doing continuation of consciousness, like working towards continuation of consciousness through the non-REM stages too. I mean,
Yeah.
the dream yoga practices are much bigger than just lucid dreaming, and learning those, being able to hold those postures allows for essentially that idea of never losing awareness, right? But I
Yes.
think most modern dream yoga practitioners, like, you need to be in REM, and so you need to be asleep.
Yeah.
It's really important. All right, let's see what else we got here. Um,
Dr. Gabriela, have you answered the original question? Am I dreaming now? That's so funny.
have you?
No, I'm really bad at it. Uh, am I dreaming? Well done. I'm not. Some different kind of dream so
Do you
far.
ever dream about your dream research?
Yeah, probably often.
Can
Yeah.
imagine that. Yeah. Okay, beautiful. Let's see. What's the best way to track one's sleep cycles?
That's many different there are many different gadgets and even your
Which is the
like
most accurate? Which one do you think is the most accurate? Because I know there's such a variance and people struggle with different ones and
I really like I've tried on myself the Muse headband and the Aura ring. And
yeah,
those are the
right.
ones we use in the lab. And they're fairly accurate, especially
Mm,
this
hmm.
headband, because that's measuring actually brain waves, whereas the Aura or the Fitbit, I think they take different metrics. They use AI to actually
Approximate from the
guess,
movements and yeah,
yeah, which sleep stage you are at. So they need to train on you for a while, and then they become more accurate with the like with time.
right. Whereas
But I
this
like
is
the Aura
reading
ring.
straight in. Yeah.
Yeah. The Aura ring, I found it pretty accurate too.
Cool. It's an easy one.
Yeah.
Um, then question here, has there been any, this is what I've always been curious about this too. Is there actually any evidence that binaural beats have an impact on brain waves? I'm under the impression it hasn't been confirmed. Do you know anything about this? There's
Honestly,
always out there like if you listen to these binaural beats, it'll get you lucid, it'll swap your brain into a meditation state or
honestly, I have never looked into it. Never. Maybe there is evidence. I have not looked for it and I haven't come across that. But I don't know, maybe.
yeah.
Sorry, I don't know.
No, I think it's one of those things that's kind of it's kind of an antidote for everything, but it's tough to. I don't think there's been that much research, not for the lucid dreaming stuff, to see if it induces lucid dreams. Yeah. Well, then I'd be curious then, Gabby, if you tell us a little bit more about the next study you're doing, because this
Yes.
is really cool. This is
Yeah.
exciting too.
But because what I share with you about the possibility of having differences in the dream yoga practitioners versus the rest of the population, and the same question, is this something that they become good at because of their personality or the practice made them better at this, right? Like we don't know the chicken or the egg. So the next part of the research is to answer this question, and we just got funded for this actually Mind and Life and the Tiny Blue Dot to do this research, um, to measure what happens if we teach people that are lay people. They don't have any meditation experience. They have never done dream yoga. What if we give them 8 weeks of some dream yoga inspired intervention and we measure the changes that happen before that and after? And how the brain waves change, well, that's going to be done by the muse at home. But like, let's see cognitively what changes, brain waves, how, like, are they different? Questionnaires. So we're going to do like a full battery of measures to see if we can actually pick something on, and things are related to cognitive flexibility and just track sleep quality. and all the other different things that we are still thinking how we're going to measure, but this is
Amazing.
developing, yeah, right now. And having a control group, right? Like we're going to give something very similar to people, but it's not dream yoga related. And then we're going to compare before and after and see if this changes anything that we think is happening because of the dream yoga practice.
I think it's so exciting. I've been kind of in a very minor support role in this. And I think one of the things that excites me the most about this particular upcoming study is beginning to explore how these practices, not even just lucidity itself, because I think, of course, having a big lucid dream is amazing, but even just doing the practices and increasing your awareness of exploring your reality, exploring the flexibility of the self, right? The daytime practices, the daytime reflections. I think even just seeing how those practices may create overall benefit for people. Because I think we see this anecdotally. I mean, I do. I'm immersed in it. I see it all the time. I see clients of mine who have massive improvements in their general waking state experience, even before they get lucid, right? So I'm like, ooh, I can't wait to see under the rigor of your lab how we can start to point to some of those correlations.
So hopefully we'll see that's what we're trying, but we'll see. We're working on it and it's going to be exciting to see the results.
Yes.
Couple of years. We'll see. It's going to take time, but I'm very excited about this research too.
So how can we follow along? Is there any way for us, and someone asked here if you have a newsletter or anything like that, is there any way for us to follow along? I know you guys are just like pretty quiet in the academic world, but is there a way for us to learn more?
This is something that I keep getting feedback on, like you should be more out there in social media. I am personally really bad at social media or like newsletters and everything. I have a website that I don't upload often. I can share that with you.
I'll have to be the one. I'll send out the newsletter. How's that? I'll be like, all
Okay,
right,
okay, yes,
Gabby, you
yes,
tell me
yes.
what's going on. I'll let everybody
And we
know.
can, yes. And then, I mean, this study I share with you is probably gonna be published in the next year. So we're working on the publication, so it's gonna be out there. So
Yeah.
uh, in the scientific community, and eventually we'll have to do like more of the outreach phase. But
I mean, this
um,
was so cool. I know that you're going to do a small pilot, but these studies will get a little bit bigger. I think what's most exciting is just starting to see with every little research point like this for practitioners like us. I know most people here have come into it with such an open heart, but it builds our confidence. I mean, it's such a amazing thing to be able to have these experiences. And 60 years ago, if you'd been telling people about these experiences you're having, unless you were in a supported spiritual practice, people would think you were crazy. I mean, those first lucid dreamers, like Stephen LaBerge, and you know, they were originally looked at like they were nuts before they were proved it. And so I'm just like so grateful that we have such dedicated, intelligent researchers like yourself and Daniel and everyone at the Pala Lab really building this sort of ecosystem of credibility that's going to allow so many more people to come into these practices, have confidence in them, experience the benefits of it. I think your work is so invaluable and it's such a critical moment. And so, I mean, from my heart and from every lucid dreamer in the world heart, just our gratitude for the work that you do. Thank you.
and my gratitude and our gratitude to you and the practitioners, and thank you for letting us understand better the practices. It's been amazing to, like to work with you. It's been really the best, one of the best things as I shared. Uh, thank you so much.
Well, thank you to all of you for joining us today. I will make sure that as the article comes out, as there are updates, I will share that with you through my newsletter. But yeah, just again, thank you so much, and I hope you all have a
Right.
beautiful week of practice. And we'll be doing another one of these calls next month. I'll let you know who my guest will be. I'll let you know when that's going to be. But yeah, just a beautiful week of practice for all of you.
Awesome. Thank you so
See you
much.
all. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.